If I didn't say anything, you would interpret it as the hip hop is fine with his behaviors. There's no one else being vocal.
If I didn't say anything, you would interpret it as the hip hop is fine with the behaviors. There's no one else being vocal. 50 Cent is music, exposing what really goes on behind the scenes in hip hop. And now rappers are in panic mode. Some have been sending private messages, music, begging not to be included in his upcoming documentary. But 50 has already begun releasing unseen clips, music, and what's coming out now could shake everything up. Let's dig into the details. The setup: 50 Cent, the Bad Boy founder, and the road music to the reckoning. The feud between 50 Cent and the Bad Boy founder was not new. It ran back to music, at least 2006, when 50 Cent put out a track accusing the Bad Boy founder of knowing who killed the notorious B.I. And before that, there was one moment, a suggestion that 50 Cent says changed how he viewed the mogul music from that point forward. The Bad Boy founder once suggested that he take 50 Cent shopping. 50 Cent says he read that offer as a test, as in maybe you'll come play with me. Music. He did not take it. And while the two men never had a direct confrontation, there was a current between them that the rest of the industry was aware of. What 50 Cent has said is simple. The music beef that everyone attributed to the two of them was never really beef in the traditional sense. It was discomfort, and discomfort, when it builds for 20 years, has a way of finding an outlet. The outlet arrived in November 2023. Cassie Ventura, the singer, who had been in a relationship with the Bad Boy founder for over a decade, filed a lawsuit against him detailing years of alleged abuse. The lawsuit settled music within 24 hours, but the level of detail in that filing did not disappear with the settlement. It cracked open a culture, music, of silence that had surrounded the mogul for the better part of 3 decades. 50 Cent was watching. He said the Cassie lawsuit was the moment he and director Alexandria Music Stapleton first sat down to discuss building a documentary. That conversation began around 5 months before he found Stapleton, meaning he was already developing the project before he had a director attached. He has described his approach in terms of the Quincy Jones School of Production. Find the best person for the role, fly them in, and trust the process to produce something undeniable. Stapleton, an Emmy-winning showrunner, became that person. I liked the idea of it being exciting, and I picked this project and started working on it about 5 months before I found Alex. What 50 Cent understood from the start was that the timing was everything. When the team began production, the Bad Boy founder had not yet been arrested. There was no federal indictment. His power, his tentacles, as Stapleton later described, it was still intact. And because of that, every person in the industry who had something to say about the mogul was still afraid music to say it publicly. The production team spent months doing outreach, phone calls, emails, and conversations that never made music it to air. Some sources spoke only behind the scenes. Others declined entirely. The people who did sit down on camera were a mix of former music, Bad Boy associates, artists, employees, and industry witnesses who have been carrying these accounts for music years and found in 50 Cent's involvement enough of a protective stamp to come forward. 50 Cent confirmed that music, his involvement, helped bring sources forward, noting that people who would not speak to music, others were willing to speak because they trusted he would not back down from the material. Then came September 2024. The Bad Boy founder was arrested on federal charges of sex trafficking, music, and racketeering on September 16th. In the days leading up to that arrest, he had been filming himself or having himself filmed to what music appeared to be a self-documentation project, a personal record of what he clearly believed were manageable final days of freedom before a narrative he could still control. That music footage ended up in 50 Cent's hands. How did you get that footage of Diddy? I figured most journalists would not disclose their sources. The question of how 50 Cent music obtained the footage became one of the most discussed elements of the entire promotional run. He was consistent. Music, every time he was asked, he would not say. He compared himself to a journalist protecting music, a source. What he confirmed was that the footage had been secured legally with full rights and that the production team had gone to considerable lengths to protect the identity of the person who handed it over. The footage was shot by a videographer the Bad Boy founder had hired for his own planned self-documentary, a project that reportedly fell apart due to a payment dispute, after which the material was legally transferred to 50 Cent's team. Does he know y'all have this music in the doc? I would doubt he knows. The Bad Boy founder had no idea the footage music was in anyone else's possession. When the docu series aired on December 2nd, 2025, it debuted as Netflix's #1 title in the United States. Music, outperforming Stranger Things, a franchise that had dominated the platform for music years. The Bad Boy founder's legal team responded within hours with a cease and desist to Netflix, calling a shameful hit piece relying on stolen footage. Netflix held music firm. The series ran. The industry had nowhere to hide. The footage, what the private videos actually showed. Music. Here is where the story becomes something that hip-hop had never seen before. The man who built a decadecil-long empire on the premise of owning his narrative, a man known as a marketing genius, a person who could bend any moment into a brand, was caught on camera in the music's most unguarded, unfiltered footage of his career. And the cruelest irony is that he shot most of it himself. The never-before-seen hotel footage captured at the Park Hyatt in New York City music. In the 6 days before his September 16th, 2024 arrest shows the Bad Boy founder in full damage control mode. Emergency calls with his legal team. Conversations with publicists, music, and strategists about how to shift public perception, while federal investigators were closing in from 3 different jurisdictions. Simultaneously, Miami, Los Angeles, and New York all conducted raids on his properties. Music. The centerpiece of the footage and the clip that circulated most widely after the docu series dropped is the mogul on speakerphone with his attorney. He is telling them they're losing, that the strategy is not working, that something has to give. But the moment that defined the entire series was not the legal maneuvering. It was what he said he needed in terms of communications. In the hotel footage, the Bad Boy founder can be heard saying he needed someone who had dealt in the dirtiest of dirtiest dirty business of media and propaganda. That line, delivered in what he clearly believed was a private strategy session, became the defining image of the entire music documentary. It was him in his own words, in his own voice, revealing the machinery he relied on, not the brand, the machine behind the brand. Director Alexandria Stapleton, speaking in a December 2025 interview with Ari Melber on MSNBC's The Beat, explained that this is precisely what made the footage so valuable to the story they were telling. The Bad Boy founder was so accustomed to self-documentation built over decades of reality television and carefully curated behind-the-scenes content that he had developed a blind spot. He assumed he would edit anything that hurt him. He assumed he still had control over the narrative. Even as federal investigators were preparing to walk through his front door, Stapleton described the Bad Boy founder as a man who had always believed he could edit out whatever he didn't want seen. But the footage captured the moments when he forgot the cameras were rolling. Music, the most memorable of V. Those moments was not the legal strategy session. It was a sequence in Harlem. The mogul had gone out to reconnect with fans, walking the streets, embracing people, projecting warmth and relatability to music, the public, while his legal crisis deepened behind scenes. And then the fans dispersed. He got back in the car. What happened next is what director Stapleton chose to include for a specific reason. Went away car. I feel like I need to wash like I'm dirt. Music, that was it. This it shows you his character. The man who had just spent the better part of an hour performing connection for the public, greeting, hugging, smiling, stepped into his car and asked for hand sanitizer. He said he needed to take a bath. He said he felt dirty from contact. That gap between the performance and the private reaction is the thesis of the documentary, compressed into a single moment. And 50 Cent, when asked if he had deliberately music included it, confirmed that its purpose was exactly that character. Was that the reason for including it? Music. Yeah, I mean, it's what's the odds that you would do that? I fell on the camera. 50 Cent said it plainly. That was a moment where the Bad Boy founder forgot he was on tape. And it told you everything you needed to know. The footage also captured the mogul in real time as new lawsuits hit him. As Stapleton described in the Ari Melber interview, there was a specific moment when the Bad Boy founder received word of a new civil music suit and his armor, as she put it, was nicked. That shock quickly turned to anger. And for a man who had spent 30 years presenting himself as untouchable, watching that transition happen in real time on his own camera with his own footage was what made the documentary feel different from anything that had come before it. When Ari Melber pressed 50 Cent on exactly how he had obtained all of it, 50 Cent smiled, invoked Harvey Levin of TMZ in the same breath as the concept of source protection, and said 3 words. In the Ari Melber interview, 50 Cent was asked how he obtained the footage and replied simply, "I got it." The Bad Boy founder's legal team filed a cease and desist the same day the docuseries dropped, calling the footage stolen and the project unauthorized. Netflix countered that everything had been legally obtained and that the production had no obligation to give the Bad Boy founder advance notice. The series ran, and within 24 hours, it was #1 on the platform ahead of Stranger Things, a franchise that had dominated Netflix for years. The Bad Boy founder had spent his entire career making sure the world saw what he wanted it to see. For 6 days in September 2024, he forgot that the camera was still running, and the world saw the rest. Who got exposed? The rappers, the revelations, and the names. Cut from the final cut. Music. The title promises rappers begging to stay out of the documentary. The reality is layered. Some of what the docu-series exposed came through the testimony of people who walked willingly in front of the music camera and said things that have been circulating in hip-hop's private channels for decades. Some came through archival footage, courtroom music documents, and never-before-seen material. And some of it was removed entirely, leaving behind a trail of names that never aired but spread regardless. The documentary's most explosive revelation, and the one that generated the most conversation long after credits rolled, came from Kirk Burroughs, the Bad Boy co-founder who had fallen out with the mogul years before the federal case. Burroughs did not hold back. He characterized the Bad Boy founder as a man who wielded power through a combination of humiliation, manipulation, music, and, when necessary, violence. His descriptions of life inside the Bad Boy ecosystem painted the mogul as someone who made examples of people who stepped out of line. But it was Burroughs' account of the Bad Boy founder's relationship with Biggie and Tupac that set the internet on fire. He alleged that the mogul was insanely jealous of the friendship between the two rappers, and went further, making the on-camera claim that the Bad Boy founder had a lot to do with the death of Tupac. The documentary does not present this as music, established fact. 50 Cent himself acknowledged in the Ari Melber interview that the music Tupac murder case is still working through legal channels with a Las Vegas trial pending as of the documentary's release. But the weight of a Bad Boy co-founder making that statement on a Netflix production with global distribution was music, a different category of accusation from anything that had come before. The second major voice was Aubrey O.D., formerly of Donity Kane. The group built on the Bad Boy founders making the band reality show. O.D.'s account was among the most graphic in the entire series. She described explicit sexual communications, emails, and photographs that she says the mogul sent her in his capacity as her employer, framing them as pressure to participate sexually. She alleges she was fired when she refused. The documentary's inclusion of O.D. expanded the frame beyond the Cassie narrative that had dominated the public conversation, demonstrating that the behavior alleged against the Bad Boy founder was not isolated to a single relationship. The third primary voice was Mark Curry, a former Bad Boy rapper and the author of Dancing with the Devil, How Puff Burned the Bad Boys of Hip-Hop. Curry brought first-hand testimony about the internal dynamics of the Bad Boy label, the shady contracts, the reliance on ghost producers, and the exploitation that defined how the mogul ran his business. He also placed himself at the scene of a 1995 shooting that many historians of the East Coast West Coast Feud point to as one of the earliest sparks, the shooting of Suge Knight's bodyguard, Big Jake Robles. Beyond these three, the docu-series featured Eric Sermon providing historical context on the 1991 City College stampede, 9 deaths at a celebrity basketball game that the Bad Boy founder was involved in, Lil C.E. from Junior Mafia, Day 26 members, and Albie Shaw, who spoke to the mogul's pattern of pursuing other men's partners going back to the Uptown Records era. 2 jurors from a federal trial spoke publicly for the first time, describing their reasoning behind the mixed verdict. One described the relationship between the Bad Boy founder and Cassie as two people in love. Another said domestic violence was not one of the charges. The reactions online were not kind to either of them. Then there is the matter of who was cut. Yeah, well, everything couldn't make the It's Only Was 4 episodes, right? So it was a lot. The most discussed name in circulation was Meek Mill. 50 Cent confirmed removing roughly 15 celebrities from the final cut. He did not confirm all of the specific allegations tied to those removals, only that the documentary's editorial focus required cutting the material to keep the narrative concentrated on the central story. The implication, which 50 Cent neither fully confirmed nor denied, was that footage existed documenting these figures' connections to Bad Boy founder's world, but that 4 hours could only hold so much. You had to pick and choose things, like even in an area where he chooses to date people who he knows previously dated someone on The Breakfast Club. 50 Cent also addressed the question of fairness and whether the Bad Boy founder should have been given a seat at the table in his own story. You know, this documentary is about people being able to tell their truth or tell their version of a story. He went further. What 50 Cent made clear is that the outreach had been made. The invitation to participate was sent and declined. The only thing I wish we were able to have Diddy be in the doc. 50 Cent confirmed that his team reached out repeatedly to the Bad Boy founder's legal team for participation. The invitation was declined each time. What the documentary exposed in the end was not a random list of rappers. It was a system, one man at the center of it, and a 30-year industry structure that looked the other way. The backlash, snitching, silence, and the industry divide. When the Music docu-series dropped, two questions consumed the discourse. The first was about the footage itself. The second was about 50 Cent. Specifically, whether producing a documentary about a man you have publicly feuded music before 20 years in the middle of his legal proceedings qualifies as snitching. For a large portion of the hip-hop world, the answer was yes. And that answer tells you more about the culture than it does about 50 Cent. The loudest voice on that question was Ja Rule. Music. Ja Rule's feud with 50 Cent predates the Bad Boy founder's legal troubles by more than 2 decades. Music. It began in 1999 over a stolen chain, ran through a stabbing at the Hit Factory recording studio in New York in 2000, and produced some of Music, the most memorable diss track exchanges of that era. When the Doka series dropped, Ja Rule was not going to miss his moment. On December Music 1st, 2025, the day before the series launch, he posted on X calling 50 Cent a rat. Always have been, always will be a rat. 6 days later, old dry snitchin' nah. He added a pointed aside. Let's not have selective outrage when it comes to domestic abuse. A statement that implied, without naming names, that there were other people in the industry whose behavior was equally worthy of scrutiny. The snitching accusation in hip-hop carries a particular weight that people outside the culture often misunderstand. It is not simply about telling the police. It is a code rooted in inner-city communities where the criminal justice system had been experienced for generations as an instrument of oppression rather than protection, and where trusting a badge could get you killed. That survival logic got encoded into the music, amplified through the Stop Snitching movement of the early 2000s, and became one of the most powerful mechanisms for protecting powerful men from accountability. Because what snitching ultimately means when applied to someone like the Bad Boy founder is this: the street code matters more than what the man did. 50 Cent had a direct answer to that framing, and it was not Music defensive. If I didn't say anything, you would interpret it as the hip-hop is fine with the behaviors. There's no one else being vocal. That is the core of his argument. Not that the street code is wrong, but that silence in music, the specific case, was functioning as an endorsement. Every rapper who said nothing, who minded their business, who chose not to comment, was allowing the entire culture to absorb the allegation that it co-signed what the Bad Boy founder stood accused of, and no one else was willing to be the one to break it. The industry's response proved his point with uncomfortable precision. No Drake, no Kendrick Lamar, no Jay-Z public statement. The figures most directly associated with the mogul's world went quiet, and the people who did comment, with a few significant exceptions, almost universally focused on 50 Cent's motives rather than the allegations themselves. Like they think that they are telling something, or just mind your business type of thing. Dame Dash, who had his own documented history of criticizing the Bad Boy founder, rejected the project on what sounded like a principled basis, but one that his critics captured exactly the problem. He said he would not tear down another black man, called 50 Cent a dry snitch, who was not acting out of care for victims, but out of desire to divide, and blasted the Breakfast Club for giving the project a platform. The logic was community loyalty over individual accountability, a position that when the individuals in question are alleged victims, reveals exactly how the silence got maintained for 3 decades, made a see and shine cut through all of it. Both former Bad Boy artists spoke in post-release interviews and delivered perhaps the most damning commentary of the entire cultural conversation. Not about the mogul specifically, but about the system around him. They were all accomplices, even the ones complaining. They were guarding while he was doing it. Everybody was a part of it. Nobody held him accountable as long as they were benefiting. That quote hung over the entire conversation, because if people who were inside the Bad Boy world were willing to say that, then this was no longer just about one man. It was about a structure that the entire industry had participated in, benefited from, and protected. Joe Budden was one of the few major voices to engage the documentary on its actual merits. He called it a very well done piece and refused to call it a hit piece, noting that viewers came away feeling the Bad Boy founder didn't get enough time, a reference to the relatively short sentence that resulted from conviction on the lesser charges. Waka Flocka Flame said the documentary changed how he sees celebrities entirely, and stated he would not stand beside the mogul even if they were family if the allegations are true. Marlon Wayans warned 50 Cent about karma and framed the project as 2 men settling personal scores, calling it kicking a man while he's down. 50 Cent asked directly whether he was petty, gave the most honest answer the entire press run. Are you petty? I accept that. I'll take that. I wear that. I'm fine. That answer, not a denial, not a deflection, just an acknowledgement, is a large part why the documentary landed the way it did. Nobody could accuse 50 Cent of pretending he had no stake in the outcome. He wore it openly, and the footage, the jurors, the former associates, the Bad Boy co-founder, all of it stood on its own regardless of who had assembled it. The backlash existed. The #1 position on Netflix also existed. Both things were true at the same time. The next target, music, the tits, the feuds, and what this pattern tells us. On March 5th, 2026, music, 50 Cent posted a screenshot on Instagram. The headline read, 50 reportedly developing surviving T.I. and Tiny documentary. Music. His caption made the intent brutally clear. Remember how quiet I got before the Diddy doc? Danny thought I wasn't coming. Music. Hope this doesn't mess up your promo tour. They're going to ask about your 20 sexual assault cases. Music. You might want to talk to a crisis PR person. He deleted the post. The screenshots were already everywhere. The move was surgical in its timing. T. Clifford. Harris was in music, the middle of promoting what he described as his final album, Kill the King, featuring Pharrell Williams. 50 Cent had chosen the moment of maximum disruption to resurface allegations that had circled T and his wife Tama Music, Tiny Harris, since 2021, and to tie them directly to the most successful accountability documentary hip-hop had ever seen. 50 Cent posted the tease on March 5th. 2026 with his Instagram caption directly referencing his approach to the Bad Boy founder documentary. T.I.'s music response was immediate. He went to Instagram with a quote that became the most shared. Exchange music of the entire confrontation. We can go bar for bar, hit for hit, or doc for doc. Either way, all you're going to do is music show how much of an FN you is. Nobody fears you over here. Boo boo. He appeared unfazed. But an unfazed response to a documentary threat from a man who just put the bad music, Boy Founder's private hotel footage on Netflix, and watched it go to #1 is a harder music position to hold than it appears. The beef between 50 Cent and T that led to this moment had been building through early 2026. T.I. appeared on the Nightcap podcast and accused music 50 Cent of ducking a versus battle and refusing to collaborate, saying he had lost respect for him. 50 Cent responded with unflattering photos of Tiny and Pepe memes targeting T.I.'s son, King Harris. T dropped 4 diss tracks in music, rapid succession, wore the right one lessons, and what Bully Sons King Harris and Demony joined in. King made references to 50 Cent's late mother. It escalated music, as 50 Cent feuds tend to do, into territory that most people in the industry consider crossing A.